We're back to the Neil Haley Show. I guess a new Neil Haley Show. Two amazing guests today, Rabbi David Wolpe and also Dede Rittman. So we have a variety of guests, an educator and also someone who's educating us about David. So I'm on the line right now. I'm really excited. This person just got signed by Warner Brothers Movie Studio. He wrote a book called The Divided Heart, David, the Divided Heart, and it's really an interesting book about David and some myths and different things. I'm going to learn a lot, so I want to welcome to the program Rabbi David. Rabbi, how are you? And thanks for coming on the show.
I'm very well and delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so Rabbi David, I guess this has got to be a whirlwind to the whole thing with Warner Brothers from a point that, you know, you've had great success as a rabbi, but you never thought that it would be a mainstream, that you would be talking all over the world about this, right? For sure.
No, it was very much a surprise. And, you know, when someone calls you and says, I just sold your book about David that I wrote for Yale University Press to Warner Brothers, is this a crank call? Is that really true? But when you look at the story in the Bible, it's such a powerful and dramatic story that it actually does make sense that someone would want to take this very charismatic, flawed, but inspiring character and bring him to life.
So really interesting, as I'm Roman Catholic, Rabbi David, and also in so many ways really into the scriptures and certain aspects, certain things that you've wrote about, and then how we're going to portray David in this movie and stuff. We've seen a lot of different things, from the Ten Commandments to other movies that have come out on the silver screen. Right. Let's talk about David himself. I look at it as a Catholic, David is so important in this process leading up to the divinity of Jesus in so many ways. So
David is a crucial character, exactly as you say, for everybody whose faith in one way or another is rooted in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament. Obviously, he's important for Jews because David is the king of Israel whose line is going to lead to the Messiah, and important for Christians because David is the king of Israel whose line leads to Jesus. And so you have to ask yourself, and in some ways this is really why I wrote the book, because I kept asking myself, why does David get that honor? I mean, of all the characters in the history of the Bible, and there are some remarkable ones, it's David who gets the great promise that the king is going to come from you and you will have the kingship forever.
Right.
And so you wonder, why does God choose David? He doesn't choose Abraham. He doesn't say that to Moses. He doesn't say it to Isaiah. He says it to David.
Right, exactly. And in this process, and David, in the story of David in the Old Testament, or again, don't mind me on this whole thing, because that's only one of the reasons I booked you on the show, is I'm really into Scripture, that he's not really this well-known figure at this point. He's
I know.
Yeah.
Which is a strange thing if you think about it. Most people, if you ask them about David, they know one or two things about his history.
Right.
They know Goliath.
Right.
They know sometimes Bathsheba. But considering how important he is, the story is not nearly as well known as it should be, except among people like you and like me who, you know, happen to love reading Scripture and find it an endless source of both inspiration and fascination.
And don't mind me on this, because I'm going to jump into the lineage of King David. Before that was King Solomon, right? Am I correct on that?
Right. Well, Saul comes before David. Saul. Right. Solomon after. And what happens is that, I mean, and this is one of those mysteries again. So God chooses King Saul.
Yes.
And then discovers that it's a bad choice.
He's not following God's plan.
Exactly. Which is one of the things that you're always perplexed about through the Bible, is how does God manage to make bad choices? You would think God would make only good choices,
right.
But it doesn't happen that way. So once it's clear that Saul is not up to being king, he's put in a job that's too big for him, and he can't handle it both personally or royally. So Samuel, who's the high priest, goes off to anoint David, and the wonderful thing about the scene in anointing David is he comes to the house of David's father Jesse, and he says, you know, present your kids. And Jesse brings out all 7 of his sons, and none of them is the new king. And finally, Samuel has to say to him, are you sure you don't have any more kids? And he goes, oh, yeah, there's a little one out back pasturing the sheep. And so you realize that not only does David not seem to be king, his father forgets that he's even home, doesn't introduce him to the company. I mean, can you imagine someone important comes to your house and you introduce all your kids except for one? So we realize that part of the legacy of David is David's very much the underdog. He's the one everyone neglects, and he proves to be the most gifted.
And it's interesting when you're talking about Saul making the wrong decisions. The reason we had the Book of Kings and had different kings involved in this process is because no one could follow God's law. So having a divinity with a leader, hopefully everyone would follow his lead. And a lot of people think of King David after, you know, Goliath and stuff, that he was perfect in so many ways. But so I could jump into so many different conversations about David's mistakes as everyone's mistakes. But you know what I would say, Rabbi David? It's because in human nature, we all make mistakes. And
well,
so
that's right. The book, I was going to say the book itself is called David, the Divided Heart, because the point is that he really was close to God throughout the book. One thing David never does, he never worships idols. He never runs away from his connection to God. But other things pull him in the world, exactly as you're saying. And so I used the subtitle, The Divided Heart, because sometimes the world pulled him in directions that he knew were wrong, as we often know that what we're doing is wrong, but he does it anyway.
Because in human nature, we're going to do that. And we're sinners till the end. And hopefully we're no longer after that point, and that certain things lead us. And I think that a lot of the things that we look at with David. So let's go to Goliath, because I know we're going too deep for our listening and viewing audience, maybe, as I could go really deep into questions with you because you're a great expert like yourself. Let's go specifically to the whole David Goliath. You talk about it as a myth. And in a lot of ways, Catholics have finally come to this realization that a lot of the stories in the Bible are mythological in certain ways to teach a theme. And so tell me why you believe that's a myth, David versus Goliath.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't, I would say this. There's no way of knowing whether there was a battle or something like a battle. But in the way, it's a myth in the following way, that really David has an advantage. And he has an advantage because he has a long-range weapon. That is, Goliath has a spear, which he can jab at David.
Right.
But David has a slingshot and a bow, a stone and a slingshot. And so he can attack Goliath from a distance. And the remarkable thing is, of course, by the way, they've done studies now of modern Bedouins who use slingshots, and you actually can easily strike a man down.
Right.
The amazing thing is that only David thought of this. I mean, it was presumably available to anyone in Israel, but David consistently sees the world in inventive and new terms, and nobody else has his gift for expanding the picture and understanding the vision.
Exactly. And so that's interesting. So you don't believe this, we don't know for sure if the story was a myth or not, but you're saying that basically what we talk about, the David and Goliath in sports or in different things, how the little person beat the giant, which I am a giant, David, by the way, Rabbi David. I'm 6'10". I was a professional wrestler before, over 300 pounds. Now I'm 270. But that basically the whole process that the little man won in so many ways. And you're saying that he had an advantage. And that's very interesting.
Right.
So you're not, because I don't know how you look at scripture or how you say the Jewish text like we look at it. Do you believe that story is true, that there was a battle and that David...
Well, here's the interesting thing about it is in Chronicles, it's actually attributed to someone else. That is the battle with Goliath. But I think it's a very plausible story. I take the scriptures as the mostly accurate recording of things that happened, but especially because they've been transmitted for so many generations, are there distortions and changes and so on? Sure. Yeah. I mean, so for example, the locations may be other than the locations that are said. The numbers in battle may be different than the numbers that are given. And by the way, if you remember, the other thing about the David Goliath story is that Goliath says, if you kill us, we'll be your slaves. If I kill you, you'll be our slaves. David kills them, but they still don't become their slaves. So there's also, inside the story itself, there's a lie, which is, I suppose, not surprising that Goliath doesn't tell the truth.
So you look at scripture in different ways. So now one like a quick answer on this is about he becomes a hero, then a husband, and it talks about family life and how he's trying to live a holy life, and he falls. And God punishes David. Explain that quickly. I know it's so hard.
Yes, David basically, he takes the wife of another man and then gets her pregnant, that is Bathsheba, and eliminates the other guy so that no one will know. Yeah. And this is, it's a double sin of it, both adultery and sort of proxy murder. And when Nathan comes to him and says, you did this, that's his great moment, where he falls on the ground, he weeps, he repents, he recognizes it doesn't matter if you're king of Israel, whoever you are, that God's law applies to you. And in fact, the sort of change in the humility and depth of his character can be dated from the moment that he listens to the prophet, as opposed to doing, by the way, what other ancient kings would have done, which is to say, kill this prophet who just insulted me.
Exactly. He at least had some humility about him. And that's key in looking at the lineage all the way up to the Messiah.
Absolutely.
In so many ways. And that's why David's so honored. And you're hoping in this portrayal through the book that Warner Brothers takes this in the right way and really shows the true David. That's your hope, right?
That is my hope. Look, you never know also the fact that there's a script and the fact that there's a producer doesn't mean in the end there will be a movie. But, Hollywood is a very tricky place. But in the end, if there is a movie, it's my hope that it will be not only an interesting story, but an inspiring story. And it'll bring David and his struggles to sort of the central consciousness of the way people look, not only at the Bible, but at the world.
I think there will be, because of the success of the others and how people are very interested in that. So where's the best place we can find information on you, Rabbi David, and our listeners?
Well, you can go, if you're interested in the book, you can go on Amazon, and if you're interested in me, you can go on my Facebook page, which is under Rabbi Wolpe, or on Twitter, I'm also Rabbi Wolpe, or my synagogue is called Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. All
right, well, fantastic. If I'm ever in LA, I'm going to come definitely have a chance to have a cup of coffee and learn so much from you.
I'd love that.
I enjoyed the whole conversation. And if you come to Pittsburgh, we'll definitely have coffee as well. So good talking to you. Best of luck, okay?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, take care. Okay, bye-bye. You're watching The Neil Haley Show. When we get back, another exciting guest. We'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Neil Haley Show, and I guess I'll call it the education segment. Again, you go to my website, totaltutor.net, for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley. Facebook, LinkedIn, Neil Haley. Instagram, Total Tutor, and Pinterest, Neil Haley. And I just was blown away by Rabbi David and learning about David's lineage. Very, very interesting. I could stay on for long. 13 minutes was definitely not enough time. Well, my next guest, who is definitely also an expert at the Total Education Network, an education expert, I'm so excited to welcome to the program Dede Rittman. She's the author of Student Teaching, the Inside Scoop from a Master Teacher. And how are you, Dede? And thanks for calling.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me on. I really like being on your show. I love your positive attitude. I love all the things you're doing. And since I've been studying you a little bit more than I did before, I really love how you are a life coach and teacher. I think that more people could really benefit from you than they even realize.
Well, that's
anybody out there listening, Neil is the best.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's all about Dede, and that's what was very interesting when I had Mark Steins from Entertainment Tonight, got to interview him. He said, always as the host, the guest is so important. Now, our topic, because we did talk before on the show, and we talked more at the portion of your book, I wanted to bring out a topic that I said, this book is not just for student teachers, because We are really in a bad situation with ed reform, looking at under Obama's administration and Bush and No Child Left Behind, that teachers are feeling burned out. Teachers, even early in the profession, are feeling like the whole world, they can't be successful. They have to keep teaching to a test. How do they stay fresh? How do they make things innovative? So we're going to talk about the burned out teacher and the new teacher, how they can truly be a success in the classroom. And Dede, it's not easy, is it?
It is not. And one of the things you have to do is surround yourself with positive people who are like-minded and who are not focusing on the negatives about the core standards, the test, but rather focusing on what can I do to help my students.
Yes, definitely. It's something that you have to focus on, that portion of it, and see that I can truly make a difference. Just because it's a job, it's a vocation. And when you get the opportunity to help others, there's nothing like it. I could imagine these people that just sit in front of a computer screen all the time and really don't see any end to the game except the paycheck. That's not the different. That's how you can't look at teaching. Oh, this is a job, I get paid for it, and I'm going to do what I can in this job, but I'm not going to go beyond the extra mile. I'm not going to go to the top of my game. I'm not going to look at this as a profession like a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer. I'm just going to kind of go through the motions, and that's just going to kill you in this profession, right?
Oh, it is. In fact, Neil, I can't believe that you just said that, because you might know that I write a weekly blog at bunnyteacher.blogspot.com, and my weekly blog on Monday that I posted was about how everybody is so tuned into their computers, but it's really the human touch that's going to make a difference in someone's life, especially as educators. We might be talking to teenagers and screenagers, as I call them, but really what makes the difference is that human touch, and that somebody cares and somebody's there to direct you and guide you. Once again, coming back to the whole coaching ethic, teaching isn't just teaching. Teacher wears so many hats. And you mentioned about the vocation, the job. I always felt that it was a true calling.
Yes.
And, I was very sad when I had to retire to take care of my husband, who subsequently died of stage 4 colon cancer. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I enjoyed helping others so much, and I want to continue that because I know I can still make a difference. And I feel the same way with my blog. And I already know from being with you that you are all about making the difference.
Oh, truly make a difference, and you got to look at progress. I think the one thing that's gone well in education reform is that business people have shown teachers that it's not just about teaching the material, it is a result. It's gone a little too result-oriented, but what we need to measure are our kids learning in the classroom. That's the key. They might not be score well on a standardized test or to the point you want them to score, but when you're delivering that material, whatever you're teaching them, write an essay, learn their multiplication tables, are the students progressing and learning? And that's what's so special about a teacher. But when you bring up the whole coaching aspect of it, you shouldn't just say, I'm presenting the material, here are the multiplication tables, I get it, right? No, you're coaching them. I know you can do this. I'm motivated. Think about a coach, Dede, which I know you've done as well. As a coach, you've got to motivate them. You've got to make them excited. And you have to do the same thing in the classroom.
It is a very energetic job, and if you don't have the energy to go into teaching, you really need to stay away. And perhaps, that kind of person should sit in an office. I know that I was exhausted every day of teaching. I always thought I was sort of on stage for 5 classes, really.
Yeah, and you're exhausted. You're drained, and I felt it at 2:30. Well, exactly. I don't miss that day in that way, but I do miss the whole performance. And it's performing, and Dede, that's the other part. I keep saying there has to be a blueprint for teachers. They have to have their specific persona. Like, you don't make a big giant man like myself teach like a nurturing woman. You give them that perspective, but you got to have the ability to perform, the ability to move an audience, and that's teaching in so many ways, right?
It absolutely is, and I think you know that I created the theater program in North Allegheny and directed the musicals for 10 years, the talent show for 20 years, and it really is all about performing. Anybody that has that ability to command an audience, to have the respect as soon as they walk out, they're going to do very well in teaching and keep the audience engaged. I think you do have to think of yourself as a performer.
It's an art. Bronx
But
teacher.
It isn't really entertaining. It isn't necessarily entertaining, though.
It's an art. Teaching is an art. You have to basically, I guess in a lot of ways, it's like a symphony, and you're the conductor, and you got to move so many different people to stay at the simple pace and have them learn in different ways and different things, and it has to be completely moving. If I just stop talking right now, Dede, then you would be like, what do I do next? Because you need another question. Well, the same thing in the classroom. If you're not moving and transitioning and grooving. So I thought maybe you have some 3 great tips for a new teacher, or also a teacher that wants to kind of, light up the room again. Get that spark back that you had the first time you came in the classroom. What suggestions do you have?
Well, my number one suggestion is to observe people you admire, because you can always learn something from them. Not to mimic them, but to actually say, what are they doing that's different than I'm doing that makes their learners be more engaged? I think that's a great thing. I think another thing is to remember back to the best teachers you had as a child.
Exactly.
What made them really great? I think that's really important. And another thing is to take a look at yourself. How's your teacher voice? How do you look? How do you present yourself? Are you slumped over? Do you stand up tall? Do you look kids in the eye? Because that's the way we promote communication. And you know that I'm all about, 3 C's, confidence, communication, and creativity in my book. And I really think those 3 can lead to really exciting teaching.
Definitely. And think about when you were saying this, look the job. Don't go. And when I walk in these public schools and see these men teachers that are not have a tie every day and are not looking professional, look like they could be in any other profession with, like, just let's say a polo shirt on, I look and I say, no. You guys have to look the part. You have to look like what mom and dad go out every day and as a professional and look like, and so that kids see the profession of this thing. And then how you interact and the smile. I hate to say you don't smile for the first year. Yeah, those teachers, I'd love to see what they're going to look like after they retire. That you really have to. So I love those suggestions. Those are so important. Look the part. It's key.
Thank you. That's actually my first chapter in my book about dressing for success. And it was Zig Ziglar who said, you can't climb the ladder of success dressed in the costume of failure, which I think is a great quote.
And you got to come with your A game. When I interviewed Mark Steins today, I mean, the guy has interviewed the most amazing people in the world, and he was on Entertainment Tonight for 17 years. If I go in and I'm not ready to be the same type of a journalist that he is, that has so much more experience, that's it. It's confidence. And I know that's another key success. You got to be confident that your kids are going to learn, and you can't be intimidated by them, right?
Right. And Neil, I never thought it was a bad thing to let the kids know that I really respected them and liked them.
Yes.
Not as their friend, but as their teacher. And that really went a long way in how kids reacted to me as a teacher. I really had almost no discipline problems because there was mutual respect. And it's not something that just happens. It's something you have to really work at.
Definitely. It's something that you think about, Dede, and you say you got to work at it. You got to be willing to say you care for these kids. And if we could have more caring teachers, we wouldn't have to worry about those standardized test scores. I don't think you would need as many standardized testing if the kids were truly learning the curriculum that was taught each and every day. And that's so important. So anything else do you think about? What would be the first step that they need? You brought up all these great suggestions. What would be that first step? We got about a minute. What would be that first step, Dede, to get the process started? Is it to check out your book? Is that the easy answer?
I think that would be great, and I'm at DedeRittman.com. I offer so many good suggestions, and I will say, Neil, because we're talking about attitude, if people could check out my blog, that Monday Inspiration, everybody needs that on a Monday. And I tell a lot of anecdotes and reflect on things that happened at school. They're not so different than what's happening today. But I think you have to go in there with a positive attitude. That's the number one thing.
And Dede taught at North Allegheny for our national audience and international audience. It's one of the most difficult places to get a teaching job in Western PA. And that you had to have that A game. You really had to do that. And the sad thing is once teachers do get tenure, they kind of sit back and say, I've worked enough. I don't need to make changes. But really look at this in so many ways. Yeah, you're not getting paid like a business person making, like, let's say $250,000, $300,000 a year, but you're going to make a difference. Anywhere Dede goes, she gets recognized by her students, parents. She is a semi-celebrity in so many ways. Any teacher is a celebrity, and they have to look at that they truly are making an example. So again, we can find all that information at your website, DedeRittman.com, and good talking to you, and best of luck, okay?
Thank you, Neil. Great to be on your show again, and best wishes to you.
All right, take care, Dede. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right, that was the Neil Haley Show, and I have a minute to kind of breathe in this crazy day, and I had a headache when I arrived at the studio, but that headache disappeared, and I have put my A game on because I love doing this and love learning from so many different people. But Dede is just a tremendous woman. You have to read her book. We talk about first days of school. This is the new first days of school. People need to read this. Okay, well, you go to my website again, totaltutor.net for more information, Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook. And for people watching TV, hashtag BPTV, or go ahead and friend me, Neil S. Haley, on Facebook, and then hash BPTV viewer, or YouTube viewer, or Google, or all those different places. So have a great week, and we have some big, exciting guests next week. Good day, everyone. I can't wait to continue to have living the dream of television and radio, the Total Education Network, 6 years. Good day, everyone.